So far, this NBA offseason has been filled with action, seeing the breakup of both the LA Clipper quote-unquote super team and the dynasty Golden State Warriors, as well as a real feel-good moment as the New York Knicks brought in Mikal Bridges in an attempt to win a championship sheerly off the power of friendship. But amongst all of the transactions that have taken place over this offseason, one that should be a little more notable is DeMar DeRozan going to the Sacramento Kings. With all of the talent and hype in the Western Conference this season, especially toward the end of the year, it's somewhat hidden the fact that the Kings were slowly sliding back into mediocrity after finally breaking their 16-season drought of not making the playoffs, to only fall short in the play-in tournament the following season. Before you rush to the comments, without the play-in tournament they still would have missed the playoffs anyways, as they were the 9th seed in the West. So this move, bringing in DeMar DeRozan, seems to be a way to breathe new life into this team while trying to stay competitive in the ever-growing West. Although this move may not be enough to make them serious contenders, it might get them back to the playoffs, but at what end? DeRozan isn't exactly a young player anymore, so making this move almost feels like this is a win-now season. But who's to say what will come after? Well, one good way to look at this is to look back on history and see if it's doomed to repeat itself. As obviously there was a time before the 16-year drought where the Kings were competitive and a legit threat. From 2000 to 2005, the Kings were a consistent 50-win team, even ending the season as the first seed in 2002. A lot of the team's success at the time could be attributed to the addition of Chris Webber, who at the time of joining the franchise was mad he was traded there because even back then everyone thought of the Kings as a joke. The height of the Kings really came in the 01-02 season. As mentioned, this is the year where they were able to secure the first seed in the West and actually the best record in the entire league. The first and only time that would ever happen for the Kings. Of course, being the early 2000s, this was smack dab in the middle of the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, and the Kings truly felt the force of that team, getting swept the year prior in the conference semis and only winning 1 out of their 4 matchups during the 02 regular season. So when it came time for the teams to match up in the playoffs, the Kings were definitely the underdogs. However, to many people's surprise, the Kings actually made it a lot tougher series than what was expected, winning games 2 and 3 and eventually having a 3-2 series lead after game 5. But after a 41-17 night for Shaq in game 6 and a very close 106-102 win for the Lakers, the tides had definitely shifted, and there was little home court advantage could do against both Shaq and Kobe going off for 30-point double-doubles, with Kobe even being 3 assists shy of a triple-double. And just like that, although they didn't know it yet, this would be the Kings' last real shot at contention for the following 16 seasons. The Kings, however, would make the playoffs for the next 2 years, but with little championship hopes. And in some sort of a weird poetic manner would actually be the last team that the Seattle Supersonics would ever beat in a playoff series before going to OKC. And it's about at this time where we need to skip ahead a decade and a half, something that I think most every Kings fan wish they could have done as well. As along those many seasons, not only did they continually miss out on the playoffs, but the reason they were falling short was usually due to bad decision making on the part of the front office. It started off by shedding off the starters for that 02 team for pennies on the dollar, dealing their number 1 option Chris Webber off to the Sixers for Kenny Thomas, Brian Skinner, and Corliss Williamson, then sending Bibby to the Hawks for again a whole lot of nothing. Debatably the best trade was sending Peja Stojakovic to the Pacers in exchange for Ron Artest, but this was right after the Malice in the Palace, so probably Meta's lowest value ever. Well, Peja was coming off his best season, even getting all the way up to 4th in MVP voting just 2 seasons before the trade. Then after completely dismantling their team, their attempts to rebuild always fell flat on their face. The team would get lucky by grabbing Isaiah Thomas with the last pick in the 2011 draft and held on to him long enough to see him average 20 and 6 before immediately shipping him to Phoenix for cash and the rights to a player that never saw a single minute of NBA play. And the reason they did this is because IT, quote-unquote, didn't fit Sacramento's ideal point guard mold, end quote. Whenever the Kings would get any picks higher in the draft, the results were never any better, making moves like trading down in the same 2011 draft to grab the Booker of Beijing, Jimmer Fredette. This trend would continue as they would miss out on players like Giannis, CJ McCollum, Bam Adebayo, as well as Luka, Trey, SGA, MPJ, and Jaren Jackson Jr. all in the 2018 draft, proving that the Kings are really just the Washington Wizards of the West. They would eventually hit on a couple draft picks like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton. Understandably, the franchise wasn't looking to pair the two guards up, however. Something that isn't understandable at all is how fast the franchise moved to split the pair up. Due to this, the true value of De'Aaron Fox wasn't what the market was reflecting at the time, so the Kings traded off Tyrese Haliburton, simply because the value the franchise would get back in return was there for him, as he was already close to averaging a double-double while playing in a clogged backcourt. And so Hallie was shipped to the Pacers, so the franchise could pair up both Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, giving fans slight hope now that the franchise was finally ready to go all in.
By the time this trade happened, the Kings felt that they had to do something to reinvigorate the slowly dying franchise. After so many seasons of losing and not making the playoffs, fan interest was starting to dwindle year after year. Grabbing Sabonis in a win-now move could definitely be justified, as it did get fans excited and generate buzz around the team again. Here's the problem though. Trading Tyrese Haliburton was one of the biggest mistakes the Kings have made for the last little while, and that's impressive when there are so many of them. Tyrese almost instantly had a breakout after leaving Sacramento, becoming an all-star the very next year. And what were the Kings left with after their supposed win-now trade? If we explore how the Kings panned out after this trade, we'll find that they did make the playoffs as a third seed in 2023 after getting a full season together. This was great, but after making the playoffs, they actually got sent home in the first round by the 6th-seeded Golden State Warriors. This was a huge blow to the Kings' momentum wave, and it definitely sowed doubts about De'Aaron Fox's capabilities as the number one on a team. But it wasn't over. The Kings were still in a great position. After only one full season together, surely they would improve and come back next year with a vengeance. In reality, what ended up happening in 2024 was the Kings fell flat on their face and didn't even make the playoffs after losing in the play-ins to the New Orleans Pelicans. Why did this happen? Where did the Kings go wrong? They went from a 3rd seed in 2023 to a 9th seed in 2024. Well, to be honest, it seems that the honeymoon phase after that trade is over, and the team was never really cut out for deep playoff runs. Neither Fox nor Sabonis suffered major season-shifting injuries or anything like that. They just couldn't cut it in the extremely competitive West. They're both good players, but they aren't great. Having two good players as your number 1 and 2 options just won't cut it in the West when every single team is gunning it for deep playoff runs. Was this win-now move even a win-now move, or did the Kings just get fleeced? Basically, we can now see that this win-now move was an utter failure. While Sacramento failed to even make the playoffs, Tyrese Haliburton was over on Indiana having the run of his life. The Pacers, who were led by a 24-year-old Tyrese, ended up making it to the conference finals. This may be controversial, but the Kings should have traded Fox away in some other deal and kept Tyrese. Fox has never had the highest ceiling in the NBA if we're being honest. He's a guy who primarily succeeds off of his speed, or the threat of it. Take that away and he turns into an average guard very fast. He's almost 27, so unless he works to improve his other skills rapidly, he's going to fall off sooner than expected. Tyrese, on the other hand, is only 24, is an extremely skilled 3-shooter and passer, which fits the NBA perfectly right now, and looks to be capable of leading a team in a somewhat deep playoff run. You tell me who you'd rather have right now. This isn't saying that the Kings won't show back up in the playoffs. For all we know, this could have been a fluke year and they'll be right back in it next year. The facts are though that this team isn't doing much besides maybe a 2nd round exit if they're lucky. Of course, the Kings front office knows this, even if it's bad for business to admit it. We know they're aware because this offseason they've gone and doubled down on the project. They knew there wasn't enough firepower on the team to be serious, so they went out and got DeMar DeRozan. A very capable scorer, but will it be enough for this team to legitimately make a splash? Probably not. DeRozan is a known playoff choker, and he's even getting up there in age now at 35. I'm gonna be honest, this is a completely pathetic double down from the Kings here. DeRozan isn't fixing any issues the Kings might have, and we all know this. The Kings are also reportedly interested in Kyle Kuzma, attempting to nab him to form possibly the most mid attempt at a super team ever. We really are sorry to all the Kings fans out there. How much longer will this suffering have to go on for? It's hard to tell, but you can always stay updated by smashing that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed the video or hated the video, feel free to leave a comment telling us what you thought. And we'll see you next week.